I'm Andie. I write and tell stories. This one is called Better Out Than In, Part 1. Julie dropped the bombshell during Sunday lunch round her parents' home in Morley, West Yorkshire. Hey, you're going to be a grandma! She seized the moment while her mother, Irene, had her hands in the washing up bowl. Less chance of one of her theatrical outbursts. Irene nearly dropped the cup she was rinsing, but just managed to steady herself as she wiped her wet hands on her hips. And clutching the draining board, she studied her daughter with an inscrutable face. Julie stole a nervous glance at her fiancé, Malk, who were keeping well out of way over by remnants of rice pudding. You see, they feared the ramifications only too well, for unbelievable as it seems today, the shame and stigma around having a baby out of wedlock, even in the 1970s, was still all too palpable. The long shadow of the workhouse hung over families like soot from the cotton mills. The tension was palpable. Well, we'll just have to bring it forward. The sooner the better, said Irene, giving her daughter a big hug. Oh, come here, lass. She even deigned to give our Malk a kiss on cheek, even though she weren't best pleased with him. After all, her daughter's predicament was all his fault. And she wouldn't entertain another live-in job, as she referred to me. I had lived with our Richard for 3 years before we got wed. The big day couldn't come quickly enough for the bride, as her pregnancy would soon start to show, despite Irene's best efforts to conceal it. Taking our places in the pew in the old church where our Richard had flung wide the gates as a choir boy many years before, we watched as Malk stood nervously before the altar, about to alter his life forever. There were no way out of it now, not with the eyes of all the old aunties bearing down on the back of his neck. As the organ struck up the first chords of Mendelssohn's Wedding March, the church door was literally flung wide as Julie appeared serenely on her dad's arm. The dress had been made hastily, out of necessity, of course, by Auntie Mary, whose own fashion sense was more Blackpool than Bond Street, swamped in an off-white lace empire-style affair, which suspiciously resembled neck curtains. Julie looked at least 6 months gone. Good luck, love, whispered old Auntie Annie, touching Julie's arm as she walked rather too briskly up the aisle. Ta, love, giggled Julie. Irene shot her a look. Getting wed was serious business. With the vows exchanged and the ring placed securely on Julie's eager digit, Malk lifted the yards of tulle veil over Julie's satin swan-shaped tiara. Congratulations, you are now man and wife. Irene nearly shouted hallelujah from the rafters, but remembered where she was just in nick of time. She wept tears of joy mingled with relief. The secret was still safe for now. Doesn't your Julie look radiant? Cried Mrs. Stockett, who worked at newsagents on a Monday and Thursday morning for Irene and Reg. Aye, she's radiant, all right, laughed Julie's younger brother Frank, cracking a smile and a wink at old Mrs. Stockett. His wife Linda tapped him on the back of neck with her hand. Hey, don't be cheeky, you, or I'll have to get me slipper out. Frank couldn't resist another wink at Mrs. Stockett as he and Linda walked on ahead out into the dull, overcast churchyard. Looks like rain, then, ever the optimist. The photos were taken just in time by a very brusque woman in a pillbox hat, as storm clouds began to gather overhead, threatening the bridesmaids' purple flowered frocks and beautiful page boy hairstyles. Most of the guests had legged it round to the pub next door, where the reception was being held above the bar in a private function room. Irene hadn't liked the fact that it was over a bar, not at first, but she'd been won round by the fact it was very close to the church and very commodious and cheap. Our Richard and I biled into the bar where the queue were 3 deep for a pint of warm Tetleys. As the wedding guests jostled and joked with each other, old Uncle Ted even had a pickled egg just to put me on. He needn't have worried, for someone from upstairs shouted, "Food's ready!" Whereupon a stampede in Crimpoline surged forth up the narrow stairs into the function room above to have first pickings at the running buffet.